My stepbrother was stealing my makeup and shoes to gift to his girlfriend, but now everyone at school is bullying him, saying they were for him. Hi, I'm a 16-year-old girl, and I recently moved out of my mom's house and am now living with my dad. My mom is begging me to come back home and give her another chance, but I really don't want to. The reason for this is her family, my stepdad Rick and my stepbrother Liam, who is also 16. My parents divorced 7 years ago, and she started dating Rick about 3 years ago. After being together for a year, Rick and Liam moved in with us, and my mom married Rick about 8 months ago. Living with these people has been challenging because Rick and Liam don't really care about me and try to avoid me as much as possible. The same goes for me. But ever since they moved in, my mom has also become quite distant, spending most of her time with them, and it seems like she doesn't care. At first, this bothered me a lot because, even though she and my dad had joint custody, I spent most of my time with her. In the first few years after the divorce, I used to divide my time equally between both of them, going back and forth. But then, 4 years ago, my dad was rewarded for his hard work and received a big promotion. This meant more responsibilities and a much bigger salary than before, basically the full package. But it also meant moving for his job. He was also busier because of his new responsibilities, and I didn't mind that, but I have to admit that I missed seeing him more often. After that, we had to adjust the custody agreement accordingly. I had school and couldn't afford to see him as frequently as I used to because it involved much more traveling. So I started staying with my mom during the week, and a couple of weekends a month, my dad would make arrangements for me to see him or he'd come visit me. It was tedious and exhausting for both of us, but we made it work. I was planning to move in with him after finishing high school because, honestly, after my mom remarried, I had no interest in living with her anymore, since I felt like she didn't care and that her priorities had changed. I tried talking to her a couple of times about this, but each time she assured me that I was still her priority, and that her relationship with Rick and Liam wouldn't change anything between us because I was her biological daughter, after all. But what happened recently really showed me that all those assurances she gave me were just empty words. They didn't mean anything to her. Recently, I found out that Liam had been stealing my makeup, which I have to say is very expensive, and a pair of my shoes to give to his girlfriend. He and I used to go to the same middle school, and now we also go to the same high school. In fact, that's how my mom met his dad. They were both single parents who met at a school event. I know for sure that Liam has been dating a girl from our grade since middle school, and since we're in the same grade, I also follow her on social media. A few weeks ago, a pair of my very expensive shoes went missing, and I had no idea where they were until I saw his girlfriend wearing them in one of her posts. This wasn't even the first time something of mine went missing, because, as I mentioned before, some of my makeup products and other pairs of shoes also disappeared without a trace. They were expensive too, since they were gifts from my dad, and I took good care of them, so I knew someone in the house was stealing them. I'd even mentioned this to my mom, and she fired the housekeeper over it, but even after that, things kept disappearing. Eventually, she told me I must have just misplaced those things. But when I saw that girl wearing my shoes in her post, I decided to ask her if she had been receiving more gifts than usual from Liam. This girl and I aren't friends, not even close, and we don't talk, but this felt like an emergency, so I decided to reach out to her without caring how weird it might seem. Surprisingly, she responded and said yes, she had been receiving many more gifts from Liam than usual over the past few weeks, mainly makeup products and shoes, and they were very expensive, so she was happy about it. I don't know why it didn't occur to her to wonder how he could afford all of that, but when I found out from her that he had been stealing my things to impress her with those gifts, I was furious. I ended up telling her that all those things originally belonged to me and that basically he had been stealing my stuff to impress her. She saw the message but didn't respond after that. I don't care if she responds or not, because that's the last thing on my mind. After that conversation with her, I decided to confront Liam and showed him screenshots of our chats. I asked him why he started stealing my things, especially personal items like makeup. At first, he tried to deny everything and claimed he had been saving up his money to buy those gifts for his girlfriend. But I'm not stupid. We both get the same allowance from our parents, and it's not nearly enough to cover even half the cost of those shoes. However, when I mentioned this to our parents that day, they had a very strange reaction that I didn't understand. Instead of reprimanding him, his dad came to his defense. He defended Liam and turned the whole situation into something that was my fault, saying it was my fault for constantly showing off the expensive gifts my dad bought me. He said it was natural for Liam to feel weird about it, and since he couldn't use the makeup and shoes for himself, he decided to impress his girlfriend with them. It may have been an immature decision on Liam's part, but Rick claimed he completely understood why he did it. It was such a stupid defense because honestly, I don't show off the gifts my dad gives me. I didn't even think they cared. The way Rick tried to defend Liam felt like he was projecting his own insecurities. I guess Rick felt insecure because he couldn't afford the same kind of expensive gifts for his son and felt bad that my father, his wife's ex-husband, was in a position to buy me such expensive things regularly. I think that's why he tried to turn the whole situation against me, but I wasn't going to let him make me feel like I was the one at fault. This wasn't normal, and I knew it. My mom was in the room the entire time but refused to comment. I was alone, facing Rick and Liam. I even asked my mom to help me because I felt like Rick was intentionally refusing to understand my point. He didn't want to acknowledge that his son had done something wrong, but my mom refused to get involved. Instead, she just told me that although she understood I was having problems with Liam, there was no need for me to act like a tattletale trying to get him in trouble. She said this was between my brother and me, and that I had to sort it out on my own without involving them. That ended the whole discussion. Liam went to his room, and our parents went to theirs, while I was left there frustrated and completely alone. No one listened to me because they didn't care. It was incredibly frustrating because, even though Liam admitted to taking my things, there was no punishment for him. In fact, Rick had defended him, and my mom refused to say a word. I felt so desperate and disappointed. After that incident, I decided I was going to stay with my dad, even if it meant leaving school. That night, I packed as best I could and quietly left the house while everyone was asleep. Luckily, I had a friend whose older sister had a car, and the two of them drove me to my dad's house. We arrived around 6 in the morning, about 4 hours later. My dad was very surprised to see us so early, but he invited us in. Then, I explained everything that had happened, which led me to make the sudden decision to stay with him. He already knew that I felt neglected living with my mom, but he had been encouraging me to hang on for a couple more years until I graduated so that I wouldn't have to worry about where to live. But after hearing me out, he said he was going to figure something out for me because it was clear I couldn't keep living with my mom, and honestly, I felt the same. I simply couldn't keep living with those people, so I was glad to have his support. My friend and her sister went back home the next day, and my friend has been telling everyone at school that I have mononucleosis. So I won't be attending for the next few weeks until I recover. Getting a medical certificate to excuse my absence will be easy, so I'm not worried about that. What really worries me is my mother because, the day after I left home, when she discovered I wasn't there, she called me and started sending messages asking where I was, and she hasn't stopped apologizing to me since. I hate that I have to break her heart because it's been a week since I left home, and she keeps begging me to come back, but I really don't feel like I want to. It's become a moral dilemma for me because I also just found out a couple more things from my dad that I didn't know before. And that's made things a lot more complicated for me. For example, my dad was very upset that my mom was treating me that way and talked about a lot of things. And that's how I found out that he had been paying a huge amount of child support since he got his promotion and had to move. After his promotion, my mom demanded 20% of his income as child support because she thought it was fair, given that I would be spending most of the time with her and only seeing my dad on weekends. Before his promotion, since they had similar incomes and shared custody, my dad didn't have to pay child support, but after that, he agreed to my mom's demand because he also thought it was fair. Since he now had a significantly higher income, and it was true that she would be taking care of me most of the time. After that, he suspected that maybe the money wasn't being used to take care of me, and he even talked to my mom several times about it. But she always assured him that she was setting the money aside for my future, and that eventually that money would be mine. He simply believed her because he didn't want to create drama. But after hearing what I told him about my time at my mom's house, he was no longer so sure that she was being honest with him. In fact, he had reasons to doubt her because he followed her on social media and had seen that she had made a couple of expensive purchases in the past, and I could confirm that. In recent years, my mom had been very crafty with her splurges, making sure to space them out so that no one would suspect she was misusing the child support. In the past few years, she had bought quite a bit of jewelry, clothes, and expensive accessories for herself. She had also bought very costly gifts for Rick and Liam, and occasionally for me, but most of the time, she didn't buy things for me because my dad already gave me expensive gifts, and she didn't want to spoil me further. According to her, Rick and my mom earn normal salaries, so it seemed a bit strange to me that she could suddenly afford those indulgences for herself, but I thought it must be coming from her savings, as I never imagined she was using the child support money she received from my dad. So I guess now you can understand why it's a dilemma for me. Because even if I had any intention of forgiving her eventually and accepting her apologies, I can't take them seriously anymore because I honestly don't know if she really wants me back or if she just wants the child support. According to the agreement, my dad had agreed to pay child support until I turned 18, and more importantly, in recent years, every time I mentioned how I felt neglected, She always told me that she was taking care of me while my dad was too busy with work. She would tell me that he had many responsibilities, like working hard to raise me, and also responsibilities toward her new husband and son, and that's why I might have felt neglected. But the truth was, she was just trying to be present for everyone, and as her daughter, I needed to be more understanding. Now that I know she had been receiving child support from my dad, all of that sounds like emotional manipulation to me, because she didn't want me to feel like she was really neglecting me, since if I complained to my dad, or worse, left, she would lose custody and the child support checks. Obviously, she didn't need to work so hard to raise me or maintain the lifestyle she wanted, because 20% of my dad's income is a lot of money. And I feel deceived that she had been feeding me so many lies over these past few years. I no longer know what to think, and on top of that, my mom keeps apologizing and begging me to come back. She's basically pleading at this point, although I haven't responded. I also have to think about how I want to finish high school, because if I move in with my dad, I won't be able to keep going to the same school, as the commute will be too much for me. So there are many things to consider here, but mainly, I really want to know if I'm doing the right thing by moving in with my dad and leaving behind my mom and her new family. Am I the bad one for wanting to leave behind my mom and her new family and move in with my dad? Update 1. I just want to clarify that some people were saying that my dad is an absent father, but that's not true. He's always been there for me emotionally. He just has to work hard to give me the future I want, and honestly, I don't mind. In fact, he offered for me to go with him when he had to move, but at the time, I was too attached to my life to consider it. I didn't want to leave behind my mom, my school, or my friends, so I decided to stay, and he also did his best with the situation. Even recently, when I complained about feeling neglected by my mom, my dad offered for me to go live with him. But when he realized that I didn't want to leave my school or my friends, that's when he started encouraging me to stay with my mom, because he just wanted what was best for me. At no point have I felt neglected by him, or that he doesn't want me around. So I just wanted to clarify that so no one thinks poorly of him. Honestly, one of the biggest reasons why I kept staying with my mom was because, before the divorce, we had a pretty normal relationship, like any mother and daughter. It was only after she started dating Rick that she began to change, and her priorities shifted. For the last few years, I've been torn between choosing what feels comfortable, staying with my mom and maintaining the life I've always known, or doing what's right for me, moving in with my dad and starting fresh. But now that it's been a few days since I made my post here, I've read the comments and talked to some people, and I feel like I have some clarity about what I really want to do and what I should do. In fact, this is something I should have done a long time ago, but yes, I'm going to move in with my dad permanently. I had to think about it a lot and spoke with my closest friends, and they all agreed that this is the best path for me right now. Everyone's going to miss me, and I'll miss them, but that's no reason to keep compromising and putting up with life at my mom's house. It's become very clear to me that her priorities are Rick and Liam, not me. It was a difficult decision because I've known these people my whole life. My friends and I have been together since we were very young, and that's why I was so attached to them. But at some point, I was going to have to leave anyway, because we can't stay together forever. Honestly, at this point, wanting to stay in a place where it's clear I'm not wanted, just to be near my friends, seems childish and stupid. I needed to choose what's best for me, and that's what I did. Luckily, I have very understanding and supportive friends, and they pushed me to do the right thing. I should have known they would always want what's best for me, even if it meant me moving away from them. I can't imagine anyone else helping me sneak out of the house, running away, and driving me to my destination for 4 hours in the middle of the night. I'm really grateful to have such wonderful friends, but now I'm going to have to start over. I've talked to my dad about this, and he's already in talks with his lawyer. It's going to be a relatively straightforward process because, since I'm already 16, I can decide who I want to live with. If I don't stay with my mom, there's no child support to pay. She's not going to get any spousal support anymore because she's remarried, so basically her funds are being cut off. When she finds that out, I'll see if she really wants me back, or if it's just the money that's been motivating her to message me, apologize, and beg me to return. She doesn't know any of this yet, since my dad is still talking to his lawyer and making arrangements. But she'll find out in a couple of days, and well, we'll see how she reacts to that. Depending on her reaction, I'll decide if I want to stay in touch with her or if I want her completely out of my life. Until then, I'll keep ignoring all her messages and calls because I really have nothing to say to her at this point, especially after the incident that led me to leave. Now that I think about it, she should have supported me, given that I wasn't wrong in that situation for being upset with Liam, since he had literally been stealing from me. I don't understand why it was a moral and ethical dilemma for her. Rick defended his son, even when he was wrong and everyone knew it, but my mom couldn't even defend me knowing I was right. The more I think about it, the more it bothers me that Liam and Rick's feelings were more of a priority for her than mine. Anyway, what's done is done. Update 2. A couple of days ago, my mom finally found out from my dad and his lawyer that I had decided to stay with him and that she would no longer receive child support. My dad and his lawyer filed the petition to get primary custody of me, but my mom will still have visitation rights. She could contest it, but it would be kind of pointless since now that I'm 16, my decision about who I want to live with holds more weight. So, it wasn't surprising that she didn't protest and just stop messaging or calling me. In a way, I was already expecting it because now that she knows she won't be getting any more money from my dad, there's no reason to try to get me back. Without child support, she doesn't want me. I guess that's how it is. I'm not going to lie, it was really painful to realize that the only reason she wanted me around in the last few years after meeting Rick was for the money. But at least now I know how things are with her, and I can make my decision about whether or not I want her to stay in my life. The answer is no. I don't think I'll ever contact her again, and I'm glad I'm moving away. I'll still try to come back from time to see my friends, but other than that, I have nothing left there. My maternal grandparents live in Greece, and I mostly just talk to them online or over the phone. Recently, they found out about what had been going on. We're not particularly close, but even they had a lot of sympathy for me and acknowledged that what my mom was doing was wrong. But well, I don't think she cares anyway. It's pretty depressing to talk about, so I'll move on to something more fun. I recently found out from some friends that a few days ago, Liam had a fight in public with his girlfriend, or rather ex-girlfriend, in the cafeteria, and it was pretty embarrassing for him. Apparently, she had been ignoring him and blocked him everywhere after I told her he had been stealing my stuff to give to her as gifts. He had been trying to talk to her because they had been together for a long time. Everyone found it strange that they weren't talking anymore, and he kept trying to get her attention, especially since they used to be really close. No one knew the reason because I had already left, and my friends aren't the type to gossip about stuff like that. But it all came to light in the funniest way because a few days ago, while he was trying to get her to talk to him in the cafeteria, she had an outburst and started yelling about what he had done. She totally humiliated him in front of everyone by revealing how disgusting it was that he had been stealing my things and pretending he had bought everything with his own money. Since then, he's practically become the laughingstock of the school. I guess it's just karma because Rick defended him before, but I know our school won't be as forgiving. Anyway, he deserved it, and I'm glad it happened. I'm a little sad I wasn't there to witness it in person, but well, you can't have everything, I guess. Update 3. It's been a little over 2 months since I left home, and slowly, everything is falling into place. I've been really busy the past few weeks because I had to start at a new school. Most of my credits transferred, but I'll still have to work hard to catch up since I joined mid-term. I know I'll be able to make it, so I'm not too stressed. I've already started making new friends, which is nice. The people here aren't too bad, and honestly, it's quite similar to my old school. Still, I really miss my old friends. I've been back home with my dad a couple of times because there was a lot of paperwork to do for the school transfer, and we needed to pick up everything I couldn't pack when I left. I ran into my mom when I went back, and she was very cold toward me. She pretended not to be interested in seeing me, but I didn't let it affect me too much. Liam and Rick were much more amusing to face. They kept giving me and my dad looks as if they were about to yell at us, but somehow they held back. I'm sure Liam isn't too happy about being publicly humiliated after I told his girlfriend the truth about the gifts he had been giving her. But well, he probably shouldn't have been a thief if he didn't want to be exposed as one. Anyway, I'm adapting well to my new life, and I'm much happier here with my dad. He's quite busy with work most of the time, but when he sits with me, he gives me his full attention, and I never feel neglected here. It's a nice change compared to what I had been used to in recent years. Looking back, I think I made the right decision. Update 4. First off, many were right in saying that life at school wasn't going to be easy for Liam after it was discovered that he had been stealing my shoes and makeup. Even though technically he was stealing them to give to his ex-girlfriend, that hasn't stopped people at school from being cruel and sarcastic toward him. My friends have told me that his ex-girlfriend has already replaced him, which isn't surprising considering how things ended between them. However, the version of the story that started circulating around school is much worse for him. A lot of students, without knowing the full details, have started making jokes about how Liam was stealing the shoes and makeup for himself, not to give them to his girlfriend. Basically, they've begun insinuating that he was using the excuse of gifts to have access to those feminine items, because he really wanted them for his own use. I know that's not true because I saw his ex-girlfriend wearing the things he stole, but we all know how school is. Once something becomes gossip, there's no turning back. I've been told that now they're calling him Liam the Flirty, and some have even left notes or drawings in his locker, suggesting that he has a secret liking for wearing makeup and women's clothing. I don't think he'll stop being the target of mockery anytime soon, because once you're labeled in some way, it's hard for things to change. As for my mom, Well, the situation has been awkward, to say the least. When I went back to the house to collect my things, I noticed that some of the jewelry I had been given was missing. In fact, several other pieces of jewelry were missing, including some that weren't gifts, and although at the time I didn't give it much thought, it became clear to me after talking to my dad that it was probably her way of getting back at me for leaving her without the child support checks. However, my dad didn't waste any time acting when he found out. The arguments between them have been quite heated, and on more than one occasion, I've heard him yelling at her over the phone, demanding that she return the jewelry and part of the money she had received from child support. The situation escalated to the point where my dad gave her an ultimatum. She could either return the jewelry and part of the money, or he would sue her for misappropriating the child support funds. It seems my mom chose the less painful option and has been returning the money in monthly installments for the last 3 months. It's not a large amount each time, but it's clear that for her it's a hard hit, both financially and emotionally. I'm not surprised she preferred to do it this way rather than face a lawsuit, especially considering she wasn't using that money on me as she was supposed to. On the other hand, there's not much to update about my stepdad, Rick. After everything that's happened, I have no direct or indirect contact with him, which is a relief. But I can imagine that he's not doing too well because, in addition to losing the income that child support represented, now my mom is obligated to return part of the money she had been taking improperly. I don't think that money is coming directly out of his pocket, but it's clear that the reduction in income must be affecting their lifestyle. Rick and my mom don't have jobs that allow them to live in luxury, so the idea that they have to use part of their combined salaries to return the money is a beautiful irony. Lately, I've been missing my friends more because even though I've met people here, it's not the same, of course. But I try to video call with them and catch up on what's happening there. It's not the same, but I'll be finishing high school soon. So it would have been the same if we had all moved out of town to study at different universities or to start our adult lives.